Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for coming out tonight. We have several items on our agenda tonight, but we want to begin by asking the clerk to announce the meeting and to call the roll.
Roll call. McKiernan. Mugia. Maddox.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here.
Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
Holland.
Here. This evening, our invocation is being given by Reverend Ken Netling of Faith Lutheran Church. I'd invite you to stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Our gracious God, we lift up your name and give you thanks and praise, especially for this room full of people, because they're all here to support community. We're grateful for a new police chief, and we give thanks for that. And we give thanks for Ellen Hanson's service to our community for a year now. Lord, we remember all of our first responders. We remember our public servants, our elected officials, but most importantly, we remember those, especially in this season, of those who don't have much to celebrate, because that's what we're here to lift them up, the disenfranchised, the ill, the lonely. And so surround all of us, Lord, with extra measures of giving and to sharing and to live that goodwill, all in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend, for being here tonight. Tonight we have two distinct parts of our meeting. We have a planning and zoning meeting that will be handled first, followed by the regular commission meeting. I will note that the regular commission meeting portion is the portion that has the animal control issues on it, which I anticipate most of you are here for. So we do have a portion that comes before that, so I would ask your patience and cooperation during that time. Well, I want your patience and cooperation all night, but during that part until we get to the item that you've come for. Before we begin the planning and zoning portion, I'll ask the clerk if there are any revisions to tonight's agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a blue sheet has been distributed. Under Section 11, Public Hearing Agenda, we have a new item. It's a new ordinance and a development agreement regarding the Lane 4 property group, regarding the Carding Fairway North Shopping Center.
Okay, thank you. I will now ask the clerk to read our planning and zoning statement, followed by the items on the planning and zoning consent agenda.
We would like to welcome all present to this meeting of the Unified Government Commission. Members of the commission are Mayor Mark Holland, Commissioner Hal Walker at Large District 2, Commissioner Gail Townsend, District 1, Commissioner Brian McKiernish, District 2 is unable to be here, Commissioner Ann Mugia, District 3, Commissioner Terrence Maddox, District 4, Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5, Commissioner Angela Markley, District 6, Commissioner Jim Walters, District 7, and Commissioner Jane Philbrook, District 8. As each petition is called this evening, all persons for or against will be given the opportunity to express their views. If this is the first time that a particular petition has been before this commission, the commission has three options. Number 1, it can approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission with 6 votes. Number 2, it can override the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. And number 3, it can return the matter to the Planning Commission for further consideration, together with the statement specifying the reasons for the referral back to the Planning Commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the Planning and Zoning agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the public, the Unified Government Commission, or staff, then the Planning Commission's recommendation on the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at one time. I will read the list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the mayor will ask if there are any requests to set aside items from the consent agenda. This is your time to stand up and request that a set aside be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If an item is set aside, the matter will be discussed and voted upon separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We will remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we would appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn it off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. As the petitioners make their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 5 minutes to state your views. As you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record. The mayor and commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any items on the planning and zoning agenda. I will ask if any members of the commission wish to disclose any contact with proponents or opponents on any item on the agenda.
Yes, I have made contact with Cheryl Stewart on SP 2014-56.
I have had significant contact with folks on Master Plan Amendment 2014-7.
I've had contact in reference to miscellaneous. Am I ahead of myself here?
No, that's right.
Miscellaneous, the 3 ordinances related to digital outdoor advertising. I am not recalling any other contact on the other items.
I've had multiple contacts on the animal ordinance amendments.
That's non-planning and zoning.
Okay, I'll wait then.
All right. Anything else for the planning and zoning items? Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had contact with proponents and opponents at various times prior to tonight with regard to the item MP 2014-7.
All right. I see no one else identifying contact.
I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Special use permit application, item number 1, SP 2014-73, Catherine Kelly, special use permit for an existing greenhouse, storage container, and office building at 4223 Gibbs Road, recommended for approval for 2 years. Vacation application, item number 1, RW 2014-3, Chase Simmons, vacation of a right-of-way at 3717 Cambridge Street, recommended for approval. Item 2, RW 2014-6, Chase Simmons, vacation of right-of-way at 3717 Cambridge Street, recommended for approval. Master Plan Amendment Application, Item 1, MP 2014-7, Master Plan Amendment to the Downtown Master Plan in conjunction with the Healthy Campus Initiative, recommended for approval. Miscellaneous item, an ordinance rezoning property 827 South 78th Street from R1 Single Family District to AG Agricultural District. Those are all items on the consent agenda.
All right. Does any member of the commission or anyone in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on the planning and zoning consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items will be voted on in a single vote, following the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Any item set aside will be handled individually. Is there anyone that would like to set anything aside?
Move for approval.
Second?
If you want to set something aside, please move to the podium and state the item, your name and address for the record, and the item you would like set aside.
My name's Dan Welch, 6221 Armstrong. I'd like to set aside the Parkway project. I think it needs
Set
discussion.
aside which one?
The Parkway project.
2014-7?
Yes.
Okay, it will be set aside.
Phil Gardis, 1904 West 36th Avenue, 2014 3 and 6.
2014, 3, and 6. They will be set aside. Thank you. All right. The remaining items are properly moved and seconded. Roll call.
Roll call. Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
All right. That brings us to item B1, vacation application RW 2014-3. Mr. Chase Simmons is making the request. I will ask our staff to lead off the conversation. Mr. Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These items are in relationship to the new University of Kansas Hospital development north of 39th Street. There's a plat that accompanies those. That's being, as you know, the plats run a little bit different process. They have to be approved by the surveyor and the county engineer and come to you all for acceptance of public rights-of-way and easements. These are two small strips of street that adjoin that plat.
Okay. Sir, you pulled this off. Would you like to come and explain your support or objection for this?
Thank you. Thank you all for the community service you provide. Some years ago, when I first came to the community, Fred Rohde, who was then head of the Rosedale Businessmen Association, the predecessor to Rosedale Development, sort of took me under his wing. One of the things he did at that time was, during a previous KU expansion, worked out a deal with the city and KU and the neighborhoods involved so that the zoning north of KU, the current area under discussion, would be changed from single family to duplex zoning so that with foresight, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, this would be an ideal place for the hospital to expand. It would then be mostly investor-owned and easily bought up. KU does a fabulous job in many areas. Institutional memory is not one of them. So as you probably are aware, third parties ended up buying up this territory, and in preparation for their own purposes, KU eventually exercised its significant muscle and now controls the area and is about to develop it. Strange, and for most of us, the rules that allow them to do development after this particular vote, they pretty much have a free hand, as I'm sure you're aware. And so this is really the only opportunity to raise possible objections to this plan. So I take advantage of that moment, if this is the right moment to do that. The plan is huge, relatively speaking, for an urban area. The petitioner's own explanation is that parts of it won't be developed for decades. In the meantime, the university obviously, or the hospital obviously has rather immediate plans for most of the ground. As today, they were grading parking lot spaces on parts of it that won't be developed perhaps for decades. The city's only opportunity to wrest concessions is based on a very vague promise that they've made to talk to the city about needs. Petitioner says that we should rest assured that because this is state property, the state will have money to kick in to help with needs we have for infrastructure in the future. I'm not sure that money is too likely to come in the current political atmosphere. And so even on simple things like road work, we really don't have any promise of future cooperation or financial support from the petitioner for the needs that will obviously change over decades. I would suggest just on technical grounds that the current petition is overreaching. A smaller petition for the ground that they actually intend to use short-term could be identified. The other purposes for the ground that they intend to use,
You have 1 minute,
perhaps for
sir.
decades.
Sir, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. The other ground that they obviously intend to use, perhaps for decades for other purposes, could be so identified and then changed as time came along. This is a lot of territory to take out of property tax, and then have uncertain what's going to go on and have almost no ability of the city to deal with it for those decades. I don't doubt that you're probably going to pass this anyway, but perhaps for future events with large institutions, planning could be given support to focus the petition to what its real immediate needs are so that the city's interests could be better protected long-term. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will at this time open up a public hearing on this item. If there's anyone who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to item, and I'm going to offer one public hearing for both of these items because they are organically related, item 1 and 2. But if there's anyone else who would like to speak, come forward to the podium at this time.
Mayor, thank you. Chase Simmons with Polsinelli Law Firm, representing the Hospital Authority. We, at the Planning Commission, did a full presentation on this. I think it's in the minutes. We can obviously do it tonight if that's necessary, but I thought I would maybe just respond to the specific concerns that were brought up. Number one, as far as why we need to go ahead and vacate these streets and ultimately do a plat on the entire area. That one allows us to go ahead and plan on a master plan basis the entire area, which was the request and discussion with the staff that we've had for well over a year. And that allows us to, we don't exactly have a crystal ball, but as we're looking forward 10, 15, 20 years, look at the whole area and make sure that we've got utilities in the right areas, streets in the right areas, et cetera, and that we're not building any of these things, especially streets, in the way of future building or future opportunities to move traffic through this area that is experiencing a lot of growth. So we think going ahead and doing this up front is exactly what should happen rather than trying to do it on a piecemeal fashion. And again, all we're really doing here is combining a lot of very old small parcels into really one large parcel and vacating some right-of-way that's not used so that we can get utilities in the right area. So that's with respect to number one. The other thing I'd like to say as far as the planning process is that under state law, we are exempt from the planning process, but we've agreed over the last couple of years to go through on a voluntary basis master planning and planning, go to the Planning Commission, make those plans available to the public, and to work very hard with the planning staff to make sure that they're in the loop all the way along. And so we've started with both a master plan that has been made available to the unified government staff and to the public, and then as to what we call phase one, which is what the construction project that would happen quickly, a lot of detail around that. And so our attempt is to make this look as much like a traditional planning and zoning process as possible, but also comply with state law, and we think we've done that. So we've really tried to go by the book here. And again, John Jackson with the hospital is here, and we're available to answer any questions or do a full presentation if that's a request.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to step forward at this time and speak either in favor or in opposition to this proposal? Let the record show I see no one else coming forward. I will close the public hearing on this item. It is back to the commission. Is there a motion?
Move for approval?
It has been moved and seconded for approval. Seeing no further comments from the commission, roll call.
Roll call. Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
That was item 1. Is there a motion for the second item?
Move for the second item?
It has been moved and seconded. Seeing no further comments, roll call.
Roll call. Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
That brings us to item C1, 2014-7. I'll ask the gentleman who pulled it off to come forward and to make your statement.
My name is Dan Welch, 6221 Armstrong. You that know me know I come to talk about parks. In the 17th of March, 1935, Kansas, there's a little article about Big 11 Lake. It's supposedly quoting a 10-year-old girl that just happened to go by with her mother. It says, "You know, Mother, I sometimes believe it must be a fairy lake. Like fairy trees and fairy flowers, it's so fancy. It's hardly real. It just can't be." That's when they brought it up to the modern design which we see today. We're seeing a proposal in front of us that's so sweeping it will change the character of downtown Kansas City, Kansas. This shouldn't go by without some kind of comment. If you read the minutes for the Planning Commission, you know I spoke to you about George White and George Kessler and the firm of Hare and Hare. And I'm going to emphasize that the vision in this plan is really not new. There's a lot of common elements from what was proposed almost 100 years ago, connecting with present Jersey Creek and Heathwood Park. Kessler proposed that in 1909. Boulevarding 10th Street, proposed by Hare and Hare in 1920. Sprinkling apartments. George White proposed that several times through the teens and into the 20s when he was in his 80s. Making it the city focus. White was very outspoken about that. Suggestion after suggestion. And integrating with the blind school. That was an initial proposal before the park was legally dedicated. This is a dramatic plan. The details, it's all in the details. A key to this plan is acquiring the 2 parcels between Minnesota and State Avenue, one with a building on it that's not used. And the last time I checked, it was back tax due for many years. This is the key. This is a central part of your plan. That piece needs to be hammered on early and fast. Reconfiguring 10th Street to match what it was in the Hare and Hare plan between Parallel and Quindaro. You can do, the reason 10th Street is as wide as it is because they had the streetcars down the middle of the street and they were on a lease and generally didn't maintain the street. So they built it extra wide for vehicles to go around the streetcars. In the Douglas Sumner plan, there's a proposal to tie Heathwood Park with Big 11 Lake. And when I reviewed this plan, what I see is rather vague and doesn't match it quite well enough. That needs to be revisited and understood better when the implementation comes, because I think this implementation is tied together with any work on 10th Street. I'm trying to caution you all that this is a difficult project, and the vision we know will never come entirely true, but we've got to hammer on the key points and make it work. There's a proposal for a new, about 2 city block park, and a proposal in the Douglas Sumner neighborhood. The initial idea is to clear the land, make it
You
look
have 1
neat.
minute, sir.
But I would suggest that you hold off really designating what that park's going to do until the neighborhood starts to revitalize and you get some sense of what's going on. I didn't hear anything about artwork. I didn't hear anything about building heights of the adjoining apartment houses proposed. There was very little discussion of pedways or bicycle ways. These are the details that need a lot of work and a lot of community input. Traffic crossings, can some be underground into the proposed parking lot? Traffic signals need to be worked in with the blind school with some of the new audio traffic signals. That would be a perfect location for them. Wi-Fi access. We've got the issue of policing. How are we going to work that? Are we going to integrate that in with the existing downtown policing?
Your time is up, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to open up the public hearing at this point. If there's anyone in the audience tonight that would like to speak either for or against this plan, you're welcome to step forward at this time. Let the record show, I see no one stepping to the microphone. The public hearing is now closed. We could do a full presentation on this. I think we've seen it several times, and I want to just thank everyone in our planning staff, the community, Gould Evans, the commission for all of your work on this. My office staff has worked hard on it as well, and I'm very pleased to bring this forward with a unanimous vote by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And with that, I would like to move for its approval.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Seeing no comments from the commission, roll call.
Roll call. Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Though I don't get to vote unless it's to make action, I'd like the record to show my support for this project. All right, that completes our consent agenda. We come now to the Planning and Zoning non-consent agenda. Item A1, SP 2014-56. I will ask Rob Richardson to make presentation on this item.
Thank you. And if Ms. Stewart would come to the podium, I'm sure she'll want to speak on this. This is a request by Ms. Cheryl Stewart to keep a shipping container in her side yard at 44th and Claudine Lane. The current proposal before you is that she be allowed to keep that for a period of 2 years, provided she builds a wood screening fence from her house to the neighbor's fence that matches the neighbor's fence.
All right, Ms. Stewart, if you would like to speak, you may.
The only thing I have is that I agree with the
Can you
recommendation.
please speak directly into the microphone?
Sorry about that. The only thing I have to say about it, Mayor Holland, is that I am in agreement to do exactly as they've requested, which is to put up the privacy fence.
Okay. All right. Are there any comments or questions from the commission on this item? I will express a concern that I have, and no disrespect. One of my concerns, we have fairly regular requests for shipping containers to be used as storage units on private property in our city. There is often a disagreement in the neighborhood about whether or not that is a proper storage unit. We have had a lot of conversations about temporary storage on site. There's an item later in our agenda tonight about someone whose house is burned down and they want a mobile home to be able to live on site while they rebuild their home. That's for 1 year. I think as a temporary structure, if there's a plan to build a structure, if there's a plan to, you're moving in or out of a house, or there's a usage, my concern is a recommendation for approval with a screening fence that a shipping container becomes a permanent fixture in a neighborhood. And I don't support that as a policy level. It might look fine on your property. I have seen pictures. It looks like a shipping container. I'm just concerned that another neighbor will come and want a shipping container as a less expensive to building a garage or a permanent facility. And if in this neighborhood, other neighborhoods as well. And so my concern about the shipping container is just in terms of the look of our community and the precedent that we're setting with it. So I'm not in favor of this, and again, it's no disrespect. I understand that you may be there temporarily in the house. If it's approved for 2 years, and Mr. Richardson, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if the house is sold, then someone else could use that storage container for the 2 years, is that right?
No, this is specifically to Mrs. Stewart.
All right. So then the other concern would be that it just sits there forever. And we're trying to move our community towards a place away from temporary and blighted items, and I'm concerned that a shipping container does not represent the character of neighborhood we're trying to build in Kansas City, Kansas. So that's my concern. If the other commissioners feel differently, that's fine. This is not a hill I'm interested in dying on. I simply wanted to state my opinion that I don't think it's a particularly good idea, and if it were to come to me for action, I would vote against it. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. The only concern I had, I used to work for a shipping company, so the only concern I had is that for the long term, I agree with you, this is not the look that we want to see the city go toward, but if no other neighbor voiced a complaint, I think I could go along with it for a limited amount of time. And what is the guarantee that at 2 years, Ms. Stewart will remove this item?
May I respond, ma'am? First off, if I permitted to do so and the requirement is that I move it within 2 years, what makes you think I wouldn't comply with the law? I mean, seriously, if the law is that I have to remove it, it will be removed. I am renting this property. I don't own it. I have permission of the owner to do this. I haven't been in contact with all of my neighbors. Nobody has raised any concern concerning this, and nobody appeared at any of the hearings, nor even showed up at the meeting that I had concerning this. So, you know, other than telling you that I would swear on the Bible to abide by the law, which I have numerous other occasions, that's all I can tell you.
Well, the reason I asked that question is it was not clear from my reading that that was the law. And since you are asking for a variance, that's why I asked the question.
Well,
Thank
their
you.
response was I had to move it in 2 years. If that is the agreement, that's the agreement I have to abide by.
Commissioner Philbrook.
So Cheryl Stewart, friend and buddy, you are swearing on a stack of Bibles you will not hang on to that thing longer than 2 years?
No, that's not what I said.
Oh, okay. But you'll be moving it.
I have to move it within 2 years.
Okay. All right. And so because you actually work in the courts and so on, you're willing to put your reputation forward for that?
Absolutely.
All right. That's all I want to know.
All right.
Move for denial.
Second.
It has been moved for denial. That is would be a reversal of the planning and zoning recommendation. I would request our legal counsel to clarify the number of votes required for denial.
It would be 8 votes.
It would require 8 votes to deny. Is there any further comment? Roll call.
Roll call, Mugia,
Aye.
Maddox, Kane, Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook,
No.
Walker,
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
It's going to be 6-2. Motion fails.
All right, so the motion to deny failed.
Correct.
Is there another motion?
Move to send it back to the planning commission.
Second.
It's been moved to be sent back to planning. Legal team, how many votes does that require? Just for clarification, it's 6, I believe.
6 to send back.
Thank you. We would need a reason articulated in the sending it back.
To review the aesthetics of the proposal in light of the neighborhood.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded to send it back to planning and zoning. Roll call.
Roll call, Mugia,
Aye.
Maddox,
Aye.
Kane, Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
All right, it has been sent back to planning and zoning. When is that next meeting, Mr. Richardson?
That would be January 12th.
January 12th, thank you. That brings us to item B1, 3 miscellaneous ordinances, or it's actually miscellaneous, or not miscellaneous ordinances. 3 ordinances about digital outdoor advertising. Commissioner Walker?
Yes, I've been working with the 2 principal providers of digital outdoor advertising signage in the community. It was intended that they have a final draft of a proposal some time ago. They did not receive that due to some back and forth in trying to get a consensus between the major providers. I'm asking that this be tabled until the meeting on the 18th, at which time the commissioners would have the final proposal no later than December 12th, I believe is what legal had advised. That way, not only will the individuals involved have an opportunity to fully review it with their legal counsel, any commissioners will have an opportunity to ask questions either of myself or of our legal department. And I think it would perhaps facilitate final action on this in a more convenient manner than attempting to do it tonight with the additional time required for other items coming up. I need a motion to table it until the 18th.
Okay, are you making that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All right, so I want to clarify, the motion and the request is to table it until December 18th. That is a non-planning and zoning meeting, so we would have a planning and zoning portion to that. We typically don't do it. I believe your request is instead of going clear to January 12th, because of the holidays, if we can do it by December 18th, it would finish it before the end of the year. Is that correct?
That was the intention.
Yeah, and I think that I want to clarify that intention because we're not setting a precedent of skipping the regular planning and zoning schedule by this action, but in terms of this specific project, due to the holidays, trying to finish it by December 18th. Is there any discussion?
Mayor, I would also point out that this particular item has been to planning and zoning, been up here, been before the commission, was tabled, has been worked. So we haven't attempted to bypass planning and zoning whatsoever. That's why I don't think it establishes a precedent.
That's right, and I just wanted to clarify that for any developer reading our minutes today, who might want to interpret this as such, that you have been working this for a long time, and we certainly want to keep moving it forward. Roll call.
Roll call. Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
All right, that brings us to our non-planning and zoning agenda, and we have we have 2 parts of that, a non-planning and zoning consent agenda and non-consent agenda. I would ask any person in the audience or any commissioner present who would like to remove anything from the non-planning consent agenda to please say that at this time. Commissioner Philbrook?
Yes, I'd like to remove number 5 ordinance for amendments to Animal Code 140376
That item
for the commissioners to ask questions.
That item will be pulled. Are there others?
Move approval of the consent agenda except for item 5.
Second?
Let the record show I see no one else moving to the microphone. It is properly moved and seconded. Roll call.
Roll call. Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
All right, that brings us to item number 5, what they might call on television the main event. The amendments to the Animal Code. I want to clarify for folks in the audience, on our planning and zoning agenda, for each item that's pulled off the consent agenda, we're required by law to have a public hearing on a planning and zoning item. Non-planning and zoning items, we're guided by the Unified Government Commission rules, And those rules specify that our public hearing is held at our standing committee, and when the standing committee work then comes forward to the full commission, we do not have another public hearing. One of the things I do want to honor tonight, and you will have that opportunity before any vote or action is taken, because you have come, I would like to offer everyone the opportunity to express your support or non-support for this item, and I will ask you at the time prior to the vote if you would like to stand in support, and then afterwards ask the people who are not supportive to stand. And if you're already standing, you can hold up your hand, but that way you would be able to communicate to the commission your position on these items in a meaningful way, simply because we're not going to have another public hearing at this time. So I am going to turn this over. Commissioner Kane chaired the committee, and Commissioner Philbrook has worked extensively on this, as has our legal staff. I want to thank everyone. These kinds of things are eminently complicated, and I appreciate the thorough work that everyone has done to work on that. So Commissioner Kane, I will turn it over to you at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And what I'm going to do is let Commissioner Philbrook talk, and then I will wrap it up a little bit before we ask questions for the other commissioners.
Okay, thank you. I would first off like to thank the folks that were on this committee working very hardly. Ugh, okay, no stress here. Lindsay Bigham and Bill Hurlbrink from the mayor's office, Wesley McCain and Ashley Folsom from the health department, Joanna Sabali, I'm not sure if that's correct, from Healthy Communities, Andrea Genero from the Livable Neighborhoods, Jenny Myers from Legal Department, Katie Barnett from the Animal and Municipal Law, she's a municipal law attorney, and professionals for the Humane and Safe KC. Captain Angel, Michelle Angel, and Justin Swartz from the Police Department and Animal Control. Kate Fields and Lorna Helmig from Humane Society of Greater Kansas City. Gordon Criswell, Assistant County Administrator, and Emmerich Cross, our Commission Liaison. And that's just a few that worked on it. I would tell you that the lion's share of work were done by these three ladies sitting up front, and that would be Jenny Myers, Katie Barnett, and Captain Angel, and they will probably be able to answer almost any questions that the commission has for them, because we've been running them ragged to accomplish this. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, sir, for...
Well, I will tell you what, I've been here 10 years, and that's the most emotional night I've seen in the 10 years that I've been here. And both sides have some passion about what's going on. The folks that spoke were very, very kind to the others on both sides of the fence. And it's probably the most difficult thing I've done since I was commissioner, is try to run a meeting with passion that high and the feelings that deep. So, and as Commissioner Philbrook talked about, there was a lot of people that worked on this ordinance. The reason that we brought it up tonight is for the commissioners now to ask, the commissioners that do not sit on the committee, for them to ask the more important questions. And like the mayor said, when we get a chance before we vote, we'll let everybody show which way they prefer, whether they're for the ordinance or against the ordinance. So, Mayor, I turn it back to you.
Thank you. So I'll open it up for conversation with the commissioners. I will note that if the commissioners want, and I've been advised by our legal team, we have an ordinance done, correct? That it could be voted on and adopted tonight. If there are amendments, we would simply refer it back to legal to draft those amendments and come back for a vote on a later night, simply because it's almost impossible for legal to make sense out of. We can't adopt an ordinance that we don't have in front of us in a complete form, is the point I'm trying to make. If there are very minor changes, I think we can go ahead with that. But if there are changes to the intent or direction of any of this, then we'll need to send it back to legal and vote on it at a different time. This is just the complexity of this document. And if it's anything, it's complex. So I'll turn it over. several different parts to this, and they're highlighted in the agenda. One is increasing the total number of animals. One is moving away from breed-specific bans, specifically the pit bull prohibition. The other is the what's called TNR, trap, neuter, and release, that relates to feral cats and the treatment of feral cats. Those are the three primary focus areas. Is that correct? It might benefit us to divide up those conversations and take them one at a time. And I'll start with the one that I think is the least controversial, and that's the kitty cats. The trap, neuter, and release item if Ms. Myers, can you explain in brief, just to clarify, we've had the documents in front of us, but just to clarify for us again what the TNR recommends.
The TNR, trap, neuter, and release, would allow a community cat, a cat who is feral, not socialized, doesn't have an owner, a cat like that.
Tobin. Yeah, speak directly into the mic.
Trap, neuter, and release.
Is the light on?
Have them come up to the podium.
Oh, now it is. Okay. Trap, neuter, and release would be related to our feral cats, our unsocialized cats in the community who do not have owners. Those cats in the community, if a community member, maybe somebody who is feeding them, would want to take them into the vet, they could get the cat spayed or neutered. And then the vet would also, they ear tip the cat. So then the next time, if animal control gets called out to that cat, animal control will know that it has been spayed or neutered. And so then we will not pick up that cat again. It will remain in the colony. And if you want further detail about why that is important and why that affects the cats in our community, I'm sure Ms. Barnett could do that for you.
Is there anyone who would like to comment on the trap, neuter, and release of the cats? Commissioner Markley?
I was just going to say that although I think it was technically illegal at the time, there was a group that did this in my neighborhood, and we had about 30 cats that were living around the dumpster over by the community garden, and it works. I don't know how it works. It's like magic, but it does work, and so I'm very supportive of the program. It's a humane way to deal with the problem that we know we have in a lot of areas in our community.
We're working on the microphones to make sure we get full volume from up here. Thank you. All right, any other comments on trap, neuter, and release? Is there consensus to move forward with that portion of the thing? If you wouldn't mind, I might even divide the vote on those items and vote directly on trap, neuter, and release portion. Is there a motion to adopt the trap, neuter, and release policy?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Seeing no other conversation on that, roll call.
Roll call, Mukia. Aye. Maddox.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
All right. I'll now go to item number 1, which is the animal code relating to increasing the number of animals currently allowed. I would ask our legal staff to state the current allowances for numbers of animals and then to state the recommended changes in the policy.
Currently, the section, and this is section 7-212 of the code, it states that it shall be unlawful for any person in charge of a resident to keep or to allow to be kept more than, currently it says 2 dogs or 4 cats, over 120 days of age, or any combination of such animals exceeding 5 in number, but in no case more than 2 dogs. And then there's several exceptions. The proposed changes that have been made are to increase it to 3 dogs or 3 cats, no combination over 6 in number, with the same exceptions.
Okay, I'll open this up for conversation. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like for legal to maybe give us a little understanding of why it's being proposed to move it up 1 animal.
If you don't mind, I'd pass that to Ms. Barnett.
Thank you. Originally, we had it a little higher. The Oversight Committee, as you heard, consisted of several people from city departments, and it was the 3 moving it as in a small increment was the recommendation of the oversight committee and a compromise. In addition to that, we've moved the special licensing from presenting to the commission to be done by animal control. So that's another substantive change for you guys.
So that's very important, that right now, if you want additional dogs or cats, you have to come to the commission for a special use permit in order to have the additional animals. This would move it from a commission decision to an administrative decision based on how that's handled. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, Commissioner.
And I just said that because my concern is that in my district there's a lot of stray cats and dogs, and when we start to speak about,
Can you just please speak directly into the microphone?
okay, okay.
That's much better.
I said the reason why I brought that concern forward is because in my community, in my district, I see a lot of stray cats and dogs, and I often get calls and emails where people are, having to deal with other people's animals and pets. And so in the midst of that, that's my concern. If we're to raise that limit and citizens are not taking care of their animals properly, do we have more animals that are stray? And then my other question is, if we're going to ask for people to have more dogs, what are we doing as a city or an entity to make sure that the stray cats and dogs that are out there now are being handled properly? So as I know last time I heard the presentation, we were short funding. So
I can pass that on to Captain Angel for you all, since she works for you.
Thank you. That's actually one of the reasons why we're asking for the increase is we go on a large number of calls that the only reason we're there is because there's 3 dogs, maybe 3 small dogs, and we're trying to move away from the responsible pet owners and where we can have more time to go after the strays and the irresponsible pet owners. And part of this proposal is to increase penalties for the 2nd and 3rd offenses for irresponsible pet owners, because that's where our problem lies.
awesome comeback.
And to add to that, one other thing is, allowing your dog to run at large is illegal or prohibited by the code, period. So whether you had 1 dog or 3 dogs, regardless, allowing any dog to run at large could be cited by animal control. So what Captain Angel said was true, is we're trying to target irresponsible pet owners, but not penalize those who actually take care of their animals.
Commissioner Kane.
Thank you. I've went through this whole deal from top to bottom, and my biggest and only concern is the number of dogs. And we have a thing in place now to where if somebody wants a 3rd dog, they can come ask for it. And I think that would be hard to facilitate what you're talking about. We've already got a plan that's working. I'd hate to change it, and I know that you guys worked really hard, but that is the only real concern I have for this whole process, is raising it from 2 to 3 dogs.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm not a member of the standing committee that first heard this, but I did watch it as it was being conducted. So I heard all of the comments about all of the issues on both sides, and there were good pros and cons of the arguments. With regard to this particular part of the ordinance, as I read it, I too had concern about raising the number of dogs. I'm not permitted. I'm not sure how that benefits us. By not raising it, well, let me say another way. If someone wants more than the allowed 2, there is a mechanism currently in place for that responsible owner to come and get approval, hopefully, for that increase. The way I see this is we're allowing the populace to have more dogs. We don't know what owners are going to be responsible or not. And I'm thinking it's going to have the opposite of the intended effect on it. That's just how I saw it. The other thing that I had some concern about was if there is an additional allowance over the number proposed that is being sought, it would no longer come through the commission. And my thought about that was we would lose control on what's really happening in the city. I know it can be laborious sometimes, but what is good is to be able to have neighbors come and say, you know, I like my neighbor, but that yapping dog has to go. And if we're allowing people to increase the number right off the bat that they can have, I'm concerned about more conflicts possibly between that. We would hope that everyone would be a responsible pet owner, but we know they're not. So, thank you.
Commissioner Markley.
Mayor, I'm just wondering if Commissioner Kane and Commissioner Townsend have not sort of identified that there are really two issues under this one issue. One is whether we're okay with increasing the number. One is whether we're okay with changing the process. And I think several of us may have different opinions on those two different issues is what I'm guessing. So I'm just throwing it out there that maybe we should sort of split that discussion as well.
Okay, I'm fine with that. That's probably helpful. So let's start with the issue of the number and whether we stay with the 2 dogs, 4 cats, no more than 5, or go to 3 dogs, 3 cats, no more than 6. Is that right? That's the recommendation. So let's stick with that part, and then we'll also talk about the process for whether it's an administrative review or a commission review, and continue to divide the issues so we can make sure we have clarity on what the intent is. Is that fair? Commissioner Walker.
I favor the increase in the number of dogs. I'll tell you the primary reason is that I believe it'll facilitate the adoption by responsible pet owners without the impediment of violating a city ordinance, or on the opposite end, having to go through the legal process of coming before the commission, which can have some cost to it, and also there is the risk that the commission on any given night might or might not approve that. Anything we can do to find responsible owners, and assuming, as I am, that the adoption process includes at least some minimal screening as to who is acquiring these dogs, I think it's better for the community. A yapping dog's a yapping dog, whether there's 1 dog at that house or whether there's 3. There can still be criminal liability for dogs that are nuisances under this proposal and under the existing laws. So I favor the increase as simply to the number.
All right, Commissioner Philbrook.
Well, I would echo what you said, and I would say that if somebody's willing to take in an additional animal, I'd rather they spent the $300 on the animal, taking care of the animal, than paying for an additional permit to us. And yeah, please
I would
don't.
please encourage everyone. Please do
Please
not
don't
clap.
respond. Please don't do that. It'll just,
We don't
it'll
clap.
just
We
make,
don't boo. We just get along.
That's right. There's no point in upsetting the herd up here. Don't mess with us. We're hard enough as it is. And this is a very difficult situation for all of us sitting up here, because, as stated before, it's very emotional on a lot of levels. And so this committee, the people who have been working on this, there's been a lot of high emotion in these committee meetings. And believe me, there's been more cussing and discussing over this one particular thing than I don't know what I've spent time on lately. But this is about our community. This is about the health of our community. And if we can get more animals off the street by having somebody adopt, and by letting our people, the animal control people, do their job of picking up the stray ones instead of calling on people that have 3 dogs versus 2. Hey, I would rather have the stray ones picked up and trapped and all that sort of thing. So I'm just trying to give us more leverage with what money we have. I'm not saying we're putting enough money into it right now, because we all know we're not, but we're working on all of this. And I would ask whoever of the 3 ladies down there wants to address about numbers of animals. If any of you have anything else to say, please do at this point.
Move for approval on the increase in the number of animals.
Second.
All right, I did offer that for these issues, I would give the audience an opportunity to stand. So I will ask if you are in favor of increasing the number of animals, I would invite you to stand quietly at this time. Thank you. Please be seated. If you are opposed to increasing the number of animals, will you please stand quietly at this time? Okay, thank you. Please be seated. All right, so the motion before us is to increase the number of animals to 3 dogs and 3 cats. I would say 2. We're open for discussion here before the vote. I would personally prefer to keep it at 2 dogs, and my reason is this. I have 2 dogs. I love my dogs. My kids love the dogs. I'm a big dog fan. My issue is we're not going to get called out for 3 dogs anymore. We're going to get called out for 4. And the vetting before the commission gives us an opportunity to make sure we're giving additional animals to quality owners. We have a lot of people that come forward for kennels, a lot of very responsible pet owners who frequently adopt pets, and we grant them a permission to have additional pets. We have a stray dog crisis in Kansas City, Kansas. And we have a problem with dogs everywhere, and we have cats everywhere. And I think that the reason we have dogs and cats everywhere is not because of the responsible owners. And our laws, unfortunately, by legal statute, we cannot have one law for a good pet owner and another law for a bad pet owner. We have to have one law for the entire community. And so I feel like simply de facto increasing the number of pets that's allowed is simply going to increase the number of strays. I'm sympathetic to the argument that we're wasting our animal control's time going after the 3rd dog. I agree with that. And I would say we spend more time in this commission chamber arguing about the 3rd dog than we spend on a $100 million bond issue. But I also think that we have, I think the 2 dogs is legitimate, and legitimate owners have a legitimate case to come forward and get that. So that's my 2 cents. Any other comments or questions from the commission? All right, we are ready to vote on the number of pets only. This is not the process about whether or not it will come to the commission. We'll have a separate vote for that. Roll call.
Roll call. Mukia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane.
No.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. I'm sorry. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
No.
That's 6-0. The motion carries. 6-2. The motion carries.
All right, so the number of animals has been increased. Now, the next question on this same issue is the process of whether it would be handled administratively or by appeal to the commission. And do we have any discussion on that? Any additional discussion, I should say, other than what we've already had? Commissioner Philbrook.
Well, I would really like for it to be handled by animal control, because they have to go out and look at the property anyway for us and come back with recommendations. You know, and it stops it from having to go through planning commission and us. And I will tell you that the chairman of the planning commission was for not having it come before them and testified as so. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Walters.
I like the current process, and I like it because everything's done in the open. It's done in a public forum. People can come and state their case, and I think we have a reasonable track record of making good decisions. And I think when we take it out of the public realm and make it an administrative activity, I think the public has less ability to observe those actions. And we're all accountable every 4 years for elections, and I think that process is working quite well.
Commissioner Walker.
If no one else besides me and my clarification, could you articulate, are we talking about a process that comes before us if they want to exceed now the 3-dog limit? Or are we talking about having just approved a 3-dog limit and yet still they come before us? I'm sorry,
We're talking about if, say, someone in a rural neighborhood and a big house has 3 rat terriers and they think that their home would be appropriate for a 4th rat terrier that they want to adopt, to go over the 3-dog limit, then would still need a special permit.
Okay, so it's now only if we exceed the newly adopted limit.
That's correct.
Or soon-to-be adopted limit. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Philbrook.
So, sorry. So, clarification on that, please. So it would be a special permit, and as it's written in here, where do they go to get the special permit?
As it's written, they would go to animal control.
Okay. And so they would pay animal control the $300 or whatever it is, and it would be handled administratively through animal control.
That's correct, as written.
Okay.
I have a question. Would the neighbors, because 9 times out of 10, we have the neighbors come and raise the issue about their objection to additional dogs, how would the neighbors' objections be handled in an administrative review process?
Is this on or do I have to push that? It's on. Okay. The way we talked about it in committee and the way that it was proposed is that animal control would go out. We would look at the yard, make sure that it's appropriate for what they're asking, and also consult with the neighbors to see if there was any opposition to it in our making our decision.
Would that be, currently under the special use permit, there's a letter that's sent out to all property owners within 200 feet and an opportunity to respond at a public hearing. How would it be handled? Would you just knock on their doors, or would you actually send a letter like we do now?
We had planned to knock on doors, and those we couldn't reach, leave a notice for them.
All right, so we have before us the issue of process, whether it's administrative review or whether it continues to come to the commission under the current process. Is there a motion?
Move to accept as presented.
Second.
So it has been moved and seconded to move to an administrative review process. I will give the audience again an opportunity. If you would support moving to an administrative review process, I'd invite you to stand quietly at this time to show your support. All right, thank you. If you are opposed to moving it to an administrative review and like to leave that before the commission, I'd ask you to stand quietly in your place and show your support. Thank you. All right, so the motion and second is to go with the committee's recommendation for administrative review. A vote, so roll call.
Roll call, Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
No.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
No.
The vote is 5-3. The motion fails.
Your votes.
And
It comes to the mayor.
this comes to the mayor.
I would vote no. I would leave it the same. So that motion fails, 5-5. And that brings us to,
It fails 5-4.
thank you for the math help. That's why I went into the ministry. We now bring us to the last item, which is the breed-specific ban, removing the prohibition for pit bulls. And we will now open that up to the dialogue from the commission. Commissioner Walker.
You know, this issue is the most troubling that perhaps I've had as a commissioner. I was here in a different capacity when the ban first went into place. And the ban, of course, was in response to a number of incidents throughout the country in which the pit bull has been identified as a particularly vicious and tenacious biter and fighter. You know, I want to say something to the committee. The committee has done really what is an outstanding job on an entire ordinance. This, as you can see, we rarely pack the house on any issue, some of which might be arguably more impactful on the lives of people. But animals are an emotional subject, and they're emotional to me. I'm always one of them that has voted to give people more dogs than the law allows. I have received some good-natured criticism from some of my colleagues about how easy I am on that. I have to tell you that I am troubled by this pit bull, the lifting of the ban on the pit bull. I like what is proposed in the ordinance about viciousness and danger and additional fines. And oddly, we were handed some statistics tonight, and I'm not sure how statistically valid they are.
It's from our police department.
Well, no, I mean, they're valid. They're correct numbers. They're from our police department. I'm sure they are correct for our community. What is not able to be known is how many of each breed of dog there is in the community. So it's hard to say that because one dog only bit 4 times in 2013, that must be a pretty good dog, whereas one dog that I was sure was going to be on the high end of viciousness, the Doberman, he's got no bites in 2013, and according to this, we only have 1 bite so far to date in 2014 from a Doberman. But I would have bet you he was in the top 3 or 4 of the most vicious dogs. So I question whether I can gather from this anything meaningful other than the fact that pit bulls are illegal in Kansas City, Kansas. And as of 2013, the police records indicate that there were 5 people bitten, certainly not the highest. And this year, thus far by pit bulls, identified as pit bulls, there's been 15 bites, which places it number 2 on the list. What's interesting is there shouldn't be any pit bulls in Wyandotte County whatsoever. And so it tells me that there are a lot of people who are going to ignore the law. This new law that we just passed, I have to tell you, if I walked anywhere near a yard and there were 3 pit bulls in the yard, I would be going back the other way. Everyone at this dais can tell you of a personal incident perhaps that they're aware of. I'm aware of one in which, and I've told my fellow commissioners, I'll tell you, other than the one we all know of that happened in our community that ended in a fatality. A gentleman went to answer a used car ad that was on a car, knocked on the door. He next found himself in the front yard, knocked off the stoop. The end result was more than 230 stitches, and supposedly the dog had never bit anyone. I am concerned that the day we approve pit bulls as an acceptable breed in this community. There will be people who will go out and buy 3 pit bulls, and they will continue to have 3 pit bulls. And I've always asked myself the question, there's hundreds of breeds of dogs to choose from. There are countless mixed breeds, and yet there's something about pit bulls that people want, and I'm lost at coming up with an answer what it is when it is known to pose a potential danger to innocent people, utility people, children coming to the door selling candy, the utility people reading the meter, police, fire. Police obviously have a means perhaps to defend against an attack. Or just an innocent neighbor coming across the street to see what was going on last night in the neighborhood. I am not convinced that, number one, we are ready to lift that ban. I'm not saying that there is not a time where we might have the resources to do it. I am convinced we do not have the physical boots on the ground or the financial resources currently, and I do not see us giving those resources to monitor this type of animal. I will not be supporting lifting the pit bull ban. I will be supporting the ordinance as written otherwise and as adopted here tonight. But I am not prepared to share that collective responsibility if someone is mauled or killed by a pit bull after we lift a ban without further restrictions or evidence that convinces me they don't pose an ongoing and continuing threat.
Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say the same that Hal said. This, after being here 3.5 years, this is probably one of the harder decisions that I've had to deal with as a commissioner. Since I'm also a part of the standing committee, and since that meeting 2 weeks ago, I probably received over 50 to 100 emails. The majority of them were for, in favor of pit bulls. And then just my personal experiences. I know people who have been bit by pit bulls. I know loving pit bulls. I know people who have family dogs that are loving. And what it really boils down to, it boils down to the owners of the dog who are often the main issue when it comes to how the dog is bred and reacts to people. And then I got the email from Reverend Mac McConnell. And I watched him as a young boy tear up pulpits and preach the word. And then I thought about Mrs. Jimmy Mae McConnell, who I kind of knew. I just kind of watched her from afar. I did know her from, being involved in the church, and I knew the McConnell family. So I knew this was something strong that I would have to face, where it would be emotion versus logic. And so I'm still stuck at a tough place because I did also do a social media log with various citizens and voters in my district, and a lot of them said that they wanted, to be able to have a pit bull. And so it's a concern for me, and I'm stuck at a tough place, but I'm willing to make this vote tonight, and it will be what it'll be. Just wanted to say that.
Commissioner Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, most of you don't know, but I got 9 brothers and sisters. My brother Vic was a postman in Wyandotte County and retired as a postmaster. Never ever got bit by a pit bull. My daughter, when she was at college, had 2 pit bulls. You could wrestle with the dogs. If you said, ow, the dogs would back off. And that's why it is emotional. Because when college was done, she had to give those dogs up to move back to Wyandotte County. And as we're looking at the information we were given tonight, the lab bit more people than anybody else. The boxer second. Unknown was tied for pit bulls at third. So it clearly shows you the pit bulls aren't the problem. It's the people, of the owners of the pit bulls. And no matter which way this goes, I don't believe it's the dog. And I wish my daughter still had those dogs. And in fact, my daughter wanted to come down to the standing committee meeting. I wouldn't even let her watch it on TV. Because it's that emotional for her, but yet it's emotional for the other family as well. So regardless of how the vote goes down, each and every commissioner up here makes votes that they don't necessarily like, but a lot of times they come from the heart.
Commissioner Walters.
Maybe you could help me with a question I have on the ordinance. As I look at the ordinance, as it currently stands, the ban on pit bulls, right or wrong, and whether it's effective or not, the goal of that ban is to prevent something bad from happening, right? And the replacement is, if something bad happens, we've got all these steps that we take to respond. If it bites one person, we do this. If the dog bites two people, we do this. If a dog bites them really bad, we do this. And there's all sorts of fines and sanctions. And unfortunately, the damage has been done, in my opinion. And yes, we have statistics that show that there are other dogs that are problems too. But as Hal said, we shouldn't have any pit bulls on this list, because pit bulls are not supposed to be here. And I don't know how many we have compared to boxers or miscellaneous, but it's hard to come to conclusions based on the information we have. I do like the idea of trying to prevent something bad from happening. And that's why I support the current ban on pit bulls. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. As I read the ordinance, I had some questions just about the language. I'm not addressing the pit bull issue at this time. In section, I guess it's 2165, dangerous animals. As I look at the language of section C, where it says, notwithstanding the definition of a dangerous animal above, no animal may be declared dangerous if any injury or damage is sustained by a person or animal who at the time such injury or damage was sustained was, okay, on the real property of the owner or keeper of the animal. Why is that an exception as to the definition of a dangerous animal?
For anyone who would be trespassing, if someone was trespassing on the real property, that would be an exception. And then we also discussed at the standing committee meeting, perhaps revising that language to include either the word trespassing or including invitee or licensee, which would include someone, a guest in your home, or which would be excluded from the exclusion, or a gas man, mailman, anyone who is technically allowed to be on your property and not necessarily trespassing. So that a bite would count as a dangerous animal bite for those people.
Okay, well, I think you're getting to the heart of my concern then. If the language is going to be amended, I would like to see it sent back so I could actually see what it is we're voting on. Because as it reads, I get your meaning, but it's overbroad. Because if you're going to look at how many times or define whether an animal is dangerous or not based on the number of times or whether it bit at all, and you're excluding the premises, what if I'm there as a guest or invitee and it bites me? It's pretty dangerous to me then, you know, or anyone else in that circumstance. So from just the language, I would like to see that amended. It may need to go back. I think that's a pretty substantive change. Still under C, smaller change, but I would like to see the wording in 3 that starts with was, teasing, and then in 4, omitted. I'm not sure we need that language based on the way it reads above.
I'm sorry, just for clarification, are you asking that we omit C, 3, and 4?
Not in its entirety, but just the word in 3 was. I think you could just start with whatever that next word is that I've written over, teasing, tormenting. I think you could just pick it up there. And the same with 4. I think you could pick it up with the word was protecting and eliminate if the animal was, those predicates.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And-
So, I'm sorry.
Can I clarify, would you be okay with under C1 on the real property of the owner or keeper, if we added language as far as would you prefer trespassing or invitee, licensee, just so we have some guidance as to how you want it?
Well, my thought was to take this out in entirety. So that's why I'm saying I'm not sure that I'm comfortable here tonight banding about some of the options. There may be others that other commissioners could come up with. But as written, I think that needs to be eradicated as it is.
Okay, and I think part of the commission, sorry for interrupting, if you weren't done, part of the committee's thoughts on this one also was if you had a dog on your property who was a guard dog, and somebody comes in and is going to break into your home or looking in your windows or snooping, that you might want that dog to protect your house. So if that dog were to get in trouble for protecting the house, then I think that might be the issue why that language is included. So if we could clean it up to prevent, the normal guest, yes, that person would be included under invitee, or the meter reader, the mailman, police, but a trespasser who has no lawful reason to be on your property, or a criminal who might be intending to do harm to you or your property, I think the dog should be able to react.
And I thought those circumstances were contemplated by number 4. You may even want to broaden them. But still, again, number 1, if you leave it as broadly as it's stated, you lose the ability to even keep track of the propensity of an animal that may be biting every guest that's coming over to the house, but as written, is exempted from definition as a dangerous animal. The other thing I would like to just get some understanding about the wording is it's still in section 7-216.5, but it's over on the next page in H. And we talk about, again, defining dangerous animal. But what happens to it? This goes to the issue of what Commissioner Walters just raised. So the animal, I guess, has been defined as a dangerous animal. The law, in A, we say it shall be unlawful for the owner of any animal to keep or maintain such an animal in the city. And then we go over to H and say, upon conviction of keeping a dangerous animal and the animal returning to its owner shall be kept under the following standards. I'm not following that.
The first part that makes it unlawful is making it an offense. And then once the animal is convicted or labeled as a dangerous animal, and they choose to keep the animal, then it shall be kept in the following, subject to the following restrictions. Currently, as it reads, there are no outlined restrictions. There's no insurance. There's no requirement of registering the animal with animal control or the city as a dangerous animal. There's nothing like that right now for an animal that bites someone, currently in your code.
Okay. Well, I think this goes to the point Commissioner Walters, has made. If we're going to define it and say we don't keep it, and then we turn around and give it back to the owner, what is the point? I don't get it. But anyway, so I'm not sure I get that.
I think it's just allowing for minor bite violations to remain within the city, because if the bite causes serious bodily harm, it's dealt with as a vicious animal. And for those animals that are nuisance animals that are putting people in fear, that's the preemptive measure. So the city isn't constantly reacting to biting animals. There actually is, under the nuisance section, for animals putting people in fear, that's the preemptive measure. including these restrictions here for animals that have had a minor bite violation. That was the intent of pulling the ban based on appearance for animals and then doing a preemptive measure based on behavior.
Okay. Well, after reading this, I would like to see at least this reworked or given another opportunity to more clearly express with the language of the ordinance the intent that you're trying to achieve. As written, I don't think it does that from what I'm seeing. With respect to the pit bull issue, I agree with a lot of the things that Commissioner Walker has already stated, and the other two commissioners who spoke early. I did observe, as I said, the standing committee meeting. There were powerful arguments made on both sides. One of the arguments made, not already addressed here, was the choice that people have to make if they want to live in Wyandotte County and own a pit bull. And a lot of persons spoke and said they would like to have remained in Wyandotte County. Some chose to leave, others chose to stay, but they had to give up the pit bull. The problem for me is that for a Mrs. McConnell, there is no choice. We would love to have everyone want to stay and be citizen of Wyandotte County, Kansas. The choice is the issue here. And I would just have to go on the side of choice for people to be safe and not in fear of what I believe a dog by breed that has more propensity to be vicious and inflict fatal fatalities than maybe another breed. With regard to the argument about it's really the result of the owner's attitude, to that I say, if I'm walking down the street, I'm not going to have the opportunity to take an inventory or an interview of the owner to see how good they were to that pit bull or not. So I would have to vote against lifting the current ban. But aside from that, just for the other issues that I've articulated, I would just like to see a rework on some of the others. Thank you.
Ma'am, you had wanted to make a comment earlier.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to respond about the proactive versus reactive, the intent behind writing in the extensive nuisance animal language and preempting any kind of bite or attack due to an animal's demonstrated behavior, including putting someone in fear, is a direct result of us replacing something that is currently reactive and replacing it with something that's proactive.
Okay. What we might do on this issue as well, just as we did with the number of dogs and how we handled the licensing, I think I will split the issue on the vote about the nuisance animal language, which is a change from our current piece that could be added regardless of whether or not we lift the ban on pit bulls, and separate that issue about whether or not we would add the proactive measures they've stated about a nuisance animal generally, because it's my understanding we could include all this new nuisance animal language for all dogs and still choose whether or not we lift the ban the breed-specific ban on pit bulls. Is that correct?
Technically, yes. The reason for, again, suggesting to repeal the pit bull ban is the lack of resources. With every call that they get on a dog that looks a certain way, that takes away from a call that they would go out on for a dog that's behaving a certain way. And so I don't know if Captain Angel wants to comment on that, but the resources that are expended on enforcing the pit bull ban are an additional reason why the committee suggested that it is removed.
Thank you. Commissioner Philbrook.
Yes, I do want Captain Angel to address that issue around cost of dealing with what people might think is a pit bull or is a pit bull, and how much it costs to deal with each one of those animals.
Okay, while we were in different meetings, I was asked to just kind of do a figure of what it takes to investigate a pit bull when we're going out on just a call of a dog that has the characteristics or looks like a pit bull, not a behavior call. Breaking it down into the time that the officer goes out, the photographs that are taken, and if we're going to do an actual removal, a seizure of the dog, going through the process of getting the search warrant and taking the dog, then housing the dog for the court until the court proceedings and all, we're figuring that it's well over $1,000 per animal that we spend when we're doing these dogs that have no other violation other than what they look like. And again, what we're trying to do, obviously, as you see, there are pit bulls in our community. They're all over. They're on every block. I don't have the manpower currently to go out and proactively enforce that. What we want to do as a unit is really go after the irresponsible owners, the strays, the dogs with the bad behaviors to make our community safer. And also give the people that have the pit bulls the opportunity to come in and license their animals with us so that we know where the pit bulls are at in our community.
Does that include the DNA testing, that money you're talking about, or is that additional?
That would be additional.
Commissioner Murguia.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So demonstrated by the number of people here tonight, I would hope that my fellow commissioners and our mayor would view that animal control in our community should be a priority. Whether you're here for these changes or against these changes, in my mind, is irrelevant. What it appears to me is that our community has lost faith in our animal control. When I hear from people on a repeated basis that we have stray dogs and cats roaming the neighborhood, and even when community people catch them, they can't turn them into animal control because there's overcrowding and too many animals already. People are left to handle those situations on their own. And when the people are left to handle those situations on their own, they don't trust government anymore. It's our job to make sure that our streets are safe of stray cats and dogs. Now, I want you to be very clear. I am very much in favor of all of these ordinance changes. I think they are best practices. But I want you to also hear, I recognize that ordinances aren't any good if we don't appropriately fund that department to enforce those ordinances. And I think what we see here tonight is a number of people, and believe me, I can relate to this living in an urban neighborhood where I see a large number of stray animals. I think the problem is that a number of people have lost faith in that because of the way our neighborhoods look. So I have a different proposal for this, in particular around the sensitive topic of the pit bull issue. Again, I want to say I'm in favor of this, and I think it's a very good change, and I think these things that Katie has brought forward are best practices, and as I told you the other night, you've done an outstanding job. However, I don't think this issue should be political posturing. If this commission is serious about getting animal control under control, whether it be being bit by a pit bull or a Rottweiler, then we need to put money behind it. So I say, I make a motion, we bring this proposal to our budget session during our budget cycle. We get a budget on how much it's going to cost to appropriately enforce animal control, and then we take that vote. And if we're willing to spend money on it and implement best practices, I am all for that.
So I would interpret that motion
Best you can.
the best I can. I would interpret that as a motion to table this portion until our budget time and ask our administrator to work with animal control to come up with a budget recommendation to fully implement the animal control needs in our community. Is that correct? Is that
Yes, Mayor, that's correct.
So that
Thank
would
you.
be to table this portion of it rather than vote on it tonight. So that is the motion that it's been motioned and seconded.
I have a question first.
Who seconded?
Maddox seconded it.
Discussion.
Yes.
I'm coming to it. We're trying to go one step at a time. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table to table this until budget, and I would probably say by April, not July. I think we would have plenty of time to have a budget recommendation by April and not July. So I would, that's the item that's on the table now, is whether or not to table this, and I will take speeches for and against that. If that's not what we're talking about, then we will.
No, just
Any discussion on tabling this issue? Commissioner
Yes.
Philbrook?
Yes, I am for tabling it, especially with what Ann says, Commissioner Margia, because some of our changes that we have asked for, including the $300 per hit for an additional animal, it could have been an administrative thing, and that money could have gone straight to the area that it's needed in, and that's for animal control. So I think there's a lot of ways we can support animal control, and I would ask that with our work that we do, Mr. Bach, that we look at administrative answers and maybe come back with some changes possibly in code as well, code and ordinance. Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering what tabling this will mean to what the words now look like of the ordinance. Referring to some of the issues that I raised while this is being tabled, if it's to be tabled, will there be renewed work on the language so that if it is brought back, it will look differently or not? That's
Yes,
what I'm
I think
asking.
your direction to clarify the language has been clear. Commissioner Walker?
Well, I'm going to oppose tabling it. I think we need to decide. We've had this working for a number of months. We've had a substantial amount of input. If we approve or do not approve the ordinance, we're telling the administrator what we want in next year's budget. I agree that I would only disagree with Commissioner McGee in the fact that I don't hold animal control accountable for the current state of animal strays or feral cats. I hold myself and this commission and previous commissions responsible for not funding it in a manner that's appropriate to the degree of the problem. There are a lot of other issues that we have, and so when it comes time to properly fund this, I don't think that it gets the high priority that obviously this crowd indicates is of interest to this community. We seldom draw a crowd of this size on an issue, and so clearly it's a priority. I think Captain Angel has done an extraordinarily good job with what we've given her to work with. And I would rather imagine that in the ranks of the police department, being the head of animal control for a period of time is not considered one of the juicier assignments to have, having seen a number of the prior captains go through it. So I'm not in favor of tabling this. We're only delaying to what end? We either want more animal control enforcement, and we're going to vote it and say we're going to vote it, and Mr. Bach will should receive the message that we want more funding for this and have adequate time. Or if we wait till budget, here we are 8 months down the road, and we're going to decide then whether we want to come up with this magical bullet for money that we may or may not be able to do. So I'm going to oppose tabling it for now. It's an issue that needs to be decided and move forward and move on.
Commissioner Markley?
So I'm just trying to clarify what it is that we're tabling. are we going to table everything, even the stuff we agreed on tonight? And is it possible to not table the stuff we agreed on tonight and still table the other stuff? We can break, I'm looking at legal. We can break the language out in a way where that works.
My expectation is we have already voted on the trap neuter release policy that is going into effect immediately.
Okay.
We have also voted on the number of animals, and that is, and we have voted to increase the number of dogs to 3, number of cats to 3, no more than 6. My expectation is that would go into effect immediately. We have also voted to leave the ordinance alone and leave the review process before the commission. That remains in effect because it's no change. So those items have already been acted on and are not, those are already passed motions, so they couldn't be included in this. The 2 items that are included in Commissioner Murguia's motion are the issue around nuisance animals and whether or not to lift the ban on pit bulls. Those are the only 2 items I have that would be tabled from tonight's work. Is that correct, Commissioner?
That's correct, Mayor.
All right. Commissioner Walters.
I'd like to move that we approve the section on vicious animals.
Okay, we already have a motion on the table, which is to table both of those items. I would take your statement as a statement against tabling. Well, out of order seems so harsh. I would just, but if you prefer, I would rule that out of order. But it's statement against tabling it. So the motion is to table it. I would speak in favor of additional funding and a full evaluation during the budget. I do not think that that needs to be correlated to making this decision tonight. I think the decision needs to be made tonight on the nuisance animal issue and on whether or not we're going to lift the ban on pit bulls. I think there's been a lot of time and energy that's gone into this. We have all the facts we're going to have, and people are going to agree or disagree, and I think it's time we go ahead and do it. So that's my view. Commissioner Murguia.
Katie, the ordinances that you have brought forward tonight, are without an increase in funding, are they going to be effective?
We anticipate a shift should the entirety of the ordinance be enacted. We anticipate a shift on animal control, spending more time focusing on nuisance animals, dangerous animals, and vicious animals instead of animals that look like pit bulls in the community. So it's kind of a trade-off, but I think that we all know that they also need more money for traps. They need more money for animal control officers. This department needs more money to function effectively, and I think that some of the community would also support different sections of this should animal control get the funding that they need.
And so I would just close and say, I am in favor of these best practices. I cannot vote for changes to an ordinance that require additional funding that we don't know today that we're going to fund, because people's memory is short. And when the budget process starts and everybody out here is at home and they're not in front of us, my fear is that the importance of animal control will be pushed to the back burner. So I just want to be clear that everybody knows my position. And in regard to Mr. Walker's comments, I'm not viewing this as a failure by our staff at all. That's why I think it is directly correlated to budget. These changes, you've admitted, are going to require an increase in funding, or we're not going to do them appropriately. If we want a quality neighborhood with quality animal control, I don't care whether it's a Rottweiler or a pit bull, it doesn't matter. If people in this community are entitled to feel safe in their community, and people up here that are elected need to be held accountable for what they prioritize when it comes to finance. So my motion remains on the table that we revisit this in April, which in the scheme of things is a relatively short time, and we correlate that. We vote on a budget and the ordinance change at the same time.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. Just briefly, I too applaud everyone who has put in the time and effort to bring this issue. But as Commissioner Walker says, and I agree, in April or whenever we begin the budget process again, I think what is evident by everyone here tonight is that there needs to be more funding put toward animal control. But I still think that's a different issue than the language and whether or not the ban should be lifted. I think that can be dealt with tonight, and still, we will remember what this room looks like now when budget time comes. Thank you.
Commissioner Markley.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make this go around. I guess what I'm questioning in the back of my mind, and I don't know if there's an immediate answer, but we know we're going to be waiting for revised language anyway. How quickly would that revised language be coming back? And are we looking at waiting? It sounds to me like we're not making a full decision tonight no matter what because we're waiting on revised language. So in my mind, I guess it sort of makes a difference in my decision because there's no point in saying, no, let's vote tonight if we know we're not really going to finish it tonight.
Well, no, thank you.
Mayor, call for the question.
The motion is before us. I will give, because if this is tabled, I don't know if this whole group will be assembled here again. So I'm going to give the audience an opportunity to weigh in on these issues, as I have in the past. So I'm going to start with whether or not this group, the crowd tonight, wants this tabled or not. So if you would be in favor of tabling this until the budget discussion, would you please stand to show your support for tabling this issue? Quietly stand. I'm sorry I didn't specify. Thank you. Please be seated. If you would not favor tabling this and you would prefer to have the decision made tonight, will you please stand? Thank you. Please be seated. All right. The other issue is I do want to record your interest because if it's tabled, we will move on past the other issues. If you are, and I'm going to ask for two things. One is going to be the nuisance animal provision generally. The second issue is going to be on the pit bull specific ban. So if you are in favor of the nuisance animal ordinance generally, irrespective of whether or not we do the pit bull ban, if you're in favor of passing this nuisance animal provision that newly proposed, will you please stand? Quietly. Thank you. Please be seated. If you are opposed to the nuisance animal piece as proposed, will you please stand? Thank you. If you are in favor of lifting the pit bull ban and allowing pit bulls in Wyandotte County, will you please stand quietly? Thank you. If you are opposed to lifting the pit bull ban and would like to keep pit bulls out of Wyandotte County, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, so we have the information before us. We are now going to vote on the tabling. Roll call.
Roll call. Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
No.
Townsend.
No.
It's 5-3. It goes to the mayor.
No. All right, that brings us to the nuisance animal piece. What I would do, because there are some requested revisions, I do have a couple questions about the nuisance animal piece myself. My question about the nuisance animal, if a trespasser comes into a property, this is a legal question that
Okay, and for clarification, we're calling it the nuisance animal, which is under 7-215.
Yes.
The language I think that you're referring to is under dangerous animal, which is under 7-216.
Thank you. My question about the dangerous animal is if someone comes into your backyard and they're not supposed to be there, you didn't invite them there, they don't have any reason to be there, and your dog bites them, then that does not, and it's not a serious bite, but it's a minor bite, that does not count as a dangerous animal. Is that correct?
As far as the court process in criminal court, would it count on your numbers?
I mean, it would be a bite report.
It
but
would be.
wouldn't go under dangerous.
Okay, it would still be counted as a bite report, so it would still fall under, it would be reported to the police department, they would write it down as a bite, so it would be, but as far as going to municipal court on that, no, it would not fall under that. Now, you still also have the civil remedies available against that party, but it would just not be taken to court in municipal court.
Now, what if it's a severe bite and someone's in the backyard, they're not supposed to be there, and they get a severe bite or are killed?
That would fall under vicious animals, which is 7-217.
Okay. And so regardless of whether or not they're supposed to be there, if a dog tremendously hurts someone or kills them, they're still considered a vicious dog?
As long as it does not include an animal that's caused serious injury to any person who is committing a criminal offense or willful trespass on the property of the owner.
Okay.
So somebody who's coming to your house to commit a crime or is willfully trespassing on your property, then it would not apply to that person.
Okay, so I have a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old at my house who have a difficult time keeping whichever form of ball they're playing with inside our fence, and frequently go to retrieve that. If they go into a neighbor's yard to get a ball, a child goes into a neighbor's yard to get a ball, and they are attacked by a dog, what does that qualify as?
Have they been told not to go onto that property?
Look, they're 9 and 10 years old.
Well,
I tell my kids all kinds of things.
No, I'm saying by the other owner, because it goes to what the language under trespass means, and if they've been told by that owner, you are not to come onto my property, then they would be committing a trespass. So you would not take that to municipal court. That's just the language of the...
So if a 9-year-old child is bitten, even harmed, like they lose an arm, tough luck, you shouldn't have been in their yard. Is that right? By the ordinance, I just want to understand.
I think it would not be charged under vicious animal.
The animal. Go ahead. The animal wouldn't be labeled vicious by the city, but of course there are other remedies to that situation. I think that the oversight committee understands the concern, and I think the oversight committee and the three of us up here, if that's something that you all would like to have removed, we could have no exceptions. I've seen that done in several cities to a vicious animal definition. We could strike subsection A.
Because my other question is, if someone is a robber, I don't know how we know they're a robber, but they come onto our property with an empty bag, and it looks like they're coming into our house, we have a right to defend our property, correct, as homeowners. Now, my understanding is, if you want to shoot somebody, which, by the way, I do not recommend, but they have to be inside your house, is that right? Can you shoot someone in your yard who just looks like they might take something? Okay, here's another question. Can I go beat them up in my driveway for being in my driveway? So, I mean, I think the answer is no. I'm asking a rhetorical question. The answer is no. If someone's in my yard and I don't want them in my yard, I can't go beat them up and I can't shoot them. But my dog can assault them, and that's okay.
Just the language, as it's written, that's what the language says, yes.
Yeah, I have a problem with that language. I have a problem, if I can't physically assault them, if it's illegal for me to physically assault someone, it ought to be illegal for my brother to illegally assault them. It ought to be illegal for my dog to assault them. I think if a dog is assaulting people, regardless, now if they're in your house, if you got a burglar in your house and my dog bites them, I'm going to give them a treat. But if they're in somebody's yard, I think a dog attacking someone in their yard should not be allowed in our ordinance. That's my strong opinion. So I think there are some revisions to this code that clarifications that have come already, but I would ask that that be given as an option to take that language out when it comes before us for a vote, because that's not. Otherwise, I like the nuisance dog, I like the vicious dog, I don't like vicious dogs, but I like the ordinance because it gives us some remedies for all breeds of dogs and not just for pit bulls, and I think that's important.
And just a point of clarification, the language currently says while the person was committing a criminal offense, would you like that removed, or do you want the whole section gone? Do you want the trespass removed, or do you want the whole section gone?
I want, this is my view, I want anything that happens outside of the house to be removed. I think if someone is in your house that you didn't invite, that ought to be allowed for your dog, because I'm allowed to assault them. I'm allowed for my brother to assault them, and I'm allowed for my dog to assault them. But I think outside the house it's too gray. And I think it's too dangerous that people can say, well, he was committing a crime, so my dog gets to bite him. I don't agree with that. So we have the nuisance animal piece before us, which I think generally is a good idea. Commissioner Walker?
I was just going to suggest language that incorporated the idea of unlawful intent. A boy retrieving a ball is not unlawfully entering upon your property. A burglar who clearly has burglary tools and a weapon and a mask and, you know, all the accoutrements of the profession, who comes onto your property and he gets bit, the dog should not be punished. The utility guy comes onto your property and or if someone has been told specifically, I tell Mayor Holland, do not come onto my property
He's already told me
ever
that.
again. And he does, he is then a trespasser. Until then, if I walk on your property and it's not posted and there's nothing to suggest that I cannot walk up your sidewalk to your front door and knock on it, I am not a trespasser. Those people should be protected and the dog should not. But if I'm walking up to the door to bust it in, and you can prove that, the dog should be exempt from punishment for that. So you have to incorporate the concept of with unlawful intent.
All right, so what I'm going to do, I don't see anyone else wanting to speak on this issue. I'm going to ask for a motion for the nuisance animal component that's obviously going to have to be reworked anyway, to come back to us, I would say, in 30 days. I think that's a reasonable amount of time. But I want to make sure there's an intent by the commission to pass it, because if there's no intent to pass it, there's no reason to rework it. Is that fair? So is there a motion to pass the nuisance animal ordinance with the intent we've described to come back with the clarifying language?
So moved.
Second.
All right, that item has been moved and seconded. We've already seen that the crowd seemingly unanimously is in supportive of this. We are now ready for a vote. Roll call.
Roll call. Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
All right, that brings us back to the final item on this issue. We do have a few more items, and I will say at the close of this item, we do have some more work that we need to do, and you're all welcome to stay and enjoy that process. If you choose to leave, I would just ask that you leave quietly so we can continue on with our meeting uninterrupted. I will also say this, the pit bull issue is a passionate issue. People are passionate on both sides. I would invite you not to clap or boo regardless of which way the vote goes. We have a lot of difficult votes, and people feel passionate about it, and I don't think we need to scold or cheer people depending on which way they go. So I would just ask you to be respectful about the passion of this issue, and it has been before us for a while. So I would accept a motion one way or another regarding the pit bull ban.
I move to ban pit bulls. No, I lied. Look at that look. Everybody's like, what? Okay, everybody's awake now. I move to lift the ban on pit bulls.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to lift the ban on pit bulls. Is there any further discussion from the commission? Seeing none, roll call.
Roll call. Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
No.
Kane. Aye. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
No.
Townsend.
No.
4-4.
4-4.
Vote is 4-4. That
Mayor cannot make action either way.
motion fails.
The motion fails. All right, so we are now completed with our animal ordinance piece. We do have a few more items. Again, I appreciate everyone for coming here tonight and for your passion around this issue. And I would ask that you please leave quietly and maintain your discussions once you get out into the lobby. Thank you. Our next item on our agenda is a public hearing agenda on an ordinance for the Fairway North Shopping Center, CID. We will now have the presenter work their way towards the podium. Is Lou going to lead that? Okay. I believe Lou Levin of our staff is going to make comment.
And Mayor, I will note that this is the item you received the blue sheet on tonight, which has the attached development agreement. Of course, this was scheduled for the public hearing. The documents that were submitted tonight are consistent with what was presented to the standing committee, though you're just getting those as far as that. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Levin, who's going to set up for the public hearing.
Do you want me to wait, Mayor, or?
Well, while we're waiting, I will say the items we have, the development agreement came together this week and is fully before you. The deal points are the same as was discussed in standing committee. We do want to honor and respect the commission's desire that is often to see the entire development agreement for some time before we vote on it. If that is your desire, then we can have the public hearing tonight, which was already scheduled. There is some urgency in terms of them being able to file paperwork with the state before the end of the year. So if you would like 2 weeks to consider this development agreement in its entirety, we could push it to the 18th. We weren't expecting it to be done. It is done. And as I mentioned, the deal points are the same. So if you feel comfortable, I'm not interested in rushing the commission. If you're not comfortable, if you are comfortable and you feel like you're ready to move forward, we can complete this deal tonight and move on. If you do have a reason that you would like to have time to read the detail of it, you will certainly have that opportunity. And but I would just want to clarify, this commission has stated previously that you like time to make sure you have an opportunity to read it. And so I'm offering you that. I'm offering you both options tonight. Mr. Levin.
Okay. Mayor, Commissioners, on November 4th, the Commission is set this evening as a public hearing to consider this issue. What's before you is a request to establish a community improvement district at the Fairway North Shopping Center and approve a development agreement with Lane 4, the developers of the project. We've actually discussed this development project with Standing Committee the previous 2 months. The site being proposed for development is a neighborhood strip shopping center located at approximately County Line and Mission Road. This is an older shopping center. It's characterized by significant deterioration, a high level of vacancy. There's 2 primary tenants that are still there, a Dollar General and a thrift store. The developers have put forth a redevelopment plan for this area. The shopping center is approximately 53,000 square foot, and it has parking for 235 spaces. What the plan for the center includes significant improvement as it relates to signage, major repair of the roof of the structure, as well as a new facade for the building. Their goal, and representing the developer today is Cord Maxwell of Polson LE, and he may be able to better describe it, but their looking for a higher use tenant for this center. I'm going to go over just briefly the highlights of the redevelopment proposal. The investment by the developer is approximately $5.6 million. The incentives that they're requesting are pay-as-you-go incentives. And what I mean by pay-as-you-go, there's no government backing to the incentives. However, what they're requesting is the establishment of a special district NRA. It would be a 20-year special project with an 85% property tax rebate. They qualify for that rebate because there are specific provisions or goals established for LBE, WBE, MBE, and MBE. There is a sales tax rebate component to the project. The unified government would retain the existing base, meaning the existing sales, the level of existing sales tax would continue to flow to the unified government. What the developer would share would be on the increment for the first 10 years, they would receive 100% of the eligible increment. In the next 10 years, it would be split 50% each between the government and the developer. The CID that they're requesting is a 1.1% CID. It's a special tax add-on. It would bring the sales tax rate for that center to 9.855%. The proposal has a $1.9 million cap on the incentives, the NRA and sales tax incentives. So once the project has generated that cap maximum, then the incentives would end. The budget for this project, over 98% of the budget is for related to hard construction costs and land acquisition. That's the incentive related to the $1.9 million cap. That's all the comments I had. Some of the commissioners present were at standing committee, and Mr. Maxwell's here. Do you have any presentation at this time, or
I have a question for you before
questions?
that. Of the $5.5 million capital investment, is it 5.5 of private money plus the 1.9 million of government incentive, or is it 5.5 less the 1.9 million?
The total investment by the developer is 5.5 million, and they would be able to recover over the 20-year period, or plus the 2 extra years for the CID, up to 1.9 million.
Okay, so it's about a $3.5 million capital investment by the developer.
Yeah, but the risk on whether or not they'll recover the 1.9 million is totally on the developer.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so the first thing I need to do is open a public hearing. We do have a public hearing scheduled for tonight. I will ask if anyone in attendance tonight would like to come forward and speak for or against this item. If you would please come forward at this time.
Didn't mean to do that. Good evening. Most of you all know me. My name is Heidi Holliday. I'm Executive Director of Rosedale Development Association, 1403 Southwest Boulevard, Kansas City, Kansas, 66103. I'm also a resident of the Frank Rushton neighborhood of which this development is in.
Okay.
Do I continue now?
Yep,
Or?
go ahead.
Okay. I'm here tonight to speak about the proposed Lane 4 development of the Northwood Shopping Center. The changes that are being proposed fall under the Unified Government Ordinance establishing the 47th and Mission Review Committee, specifically Section 27521B, which reads, type of development, these standards shall be applied to new development, redevelopment, or exterior modifications that significantly alter the appearance of a building or site within the overlay district. This includes building additions, facade improvements, or landscaping improvements. RDA has been an active member of the 47th and Mission Committee since its inception. while RDA doesn't have a position on the merits of the development agreement. We want to make sure that the development proposal follows the review process outlined by the ordinance. Our understanding is that there has been an initial hearing of the proposed development by the 47th and Mission Review Committee. That was in mid-November, but the final presentation and of the developers will be next week, and there's been no final approval. The developers are scheduled to appear before it next Friday to address the concerns that the committee had at the November 14th meeting. This review committee operates as an interlocal agreement with the cities of Westwood and Roland Park, each of which also appoints members to the committee. The committee generally meets monthly, and its work in upholding the design guidelines and overlay requirements laid out in the ordinance has contributed greatly to the success and high-quality look and feel of the district. In fact, all of the recent developments along the corridor, including Taco Republic and KCK, Walmart, and Lulu's Thai Noodles in Westwood, as well as the proposed new Bread and Butter Concepts restaurant at 47th and Mission in Roland Park, have worked or will work extensively with the committee to develop plans that meet the overlay requirements. I'm here tonight to reiterate how important upholding the ordinance and interlocal agreement is to the character and success of the Rosedale neighborhood. The Fairway Northwood Shopping Center is one of the largest properties within the overlay district, and we urge the commission and UG staff to ensure that the ordinance requirements are followed and upheld regardless of the economic incentives approved. Thank you.
That's an interesting point.
Good evening. My name is Zach Flanders. I am a resident of Frank Rushton neighborhood, 4415 Booth Street, 66103. And I'm also an AICP planner and board of the the Rosedale Development Association. And I walk to this development all the time. I walk to Taco Republic and Lulu's and everything around here. And my main concern about what I've seen so far of the development is that I haven't seen anything about the treatment of the sidewalks or the public realm. I'm all for improving the facades. I'm excited about new investment in my neighborhood, and I'll continue to walk there, I'm sure, no matter what happens. But I can tell you that it's very uncomfortable to walk by or in front of that development right now. The sidewalks are right next to very fast-moving and busy traffic, and at times crumbling, and there are several curb cuts along the way that present a significant conflict between pedestrians and automobiles. So I guess I'm concerned about the lack of treatment of the sidewalk. Also, our neighborhood is very active in our neighborhood association, and this particular property has come up again and again in our meetings about unsafe conditions behind the mall. And I think that's primarily due to a lack of lighting. It's very isolated back there. So I'd like to see something about lighting or improvements in the back of the shopping center as well. And I would also just bring to the attention of the commission the Rosedale Master Plan, which was done in 2005, has pretty extensive language about the treatment of the corridor. And I'm not going to read the whole plan or much of the plan or any of the plan. But just, this plan is on the books, it's the policy of this government, and it has specific recommendations about improving the sidewalk and the corridor, and that's my main concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Phil Gardis, 1904 West 36th Avenue. I too am on the Rosedale Development Board. My concern's mostly about the financing. Lane 4 has did a beautiful building at 39th and Rainbow recently, but part of the information that they gave us during that development was it was originally going to be built as a residential on the upper floors. It turned into a KU annex essentially because they said it wasn't big enough to be successful as a residential development. But at the exact same time, at the other end of KU on the Missouri side, a builder put up with no public money, a very similar, slightly smaller building with 4 stories, And all of those residential units are successfully rented or sold, and they have a waiting list. So I have a little bit of concern about projections reliability at this point. I don't remember anyone getting a 22-year CID before. I think that's excessive. The whole project where the public is made to pay for private development is repugnant to me. I believe we should encourage people who really want to put their money into an operation, let them put it in before we subsidize people who have perhaps connections to get public money instead. So I think that we should cautiously go, look more for a developer who's willing to develop the whole thing on their own or close to it. The original project here also mentioned 2.2 million, which at best could be called a lot of money to upgrade this small shopping center. At this point, at 5.56 million, we're talking not just major renovation, this is beyond the cost of the property. So at this point, if they're going to invest this much money for a long-term investment, it should be the highest and best use for the property, conforming explicitly and completely to all of the guidance offered by the 47th Mission Road Covenant as well as our own Rosedale plan. Thank you.
David Melhoff. I live at 4443 Francis, KCK. I'm a member of the Spring Valley Neighborhood Group. I'm quite a few of us we have a very active neighborhood group, very active social media group, and overwhelmingly many of us in Spring Valley are for this. I also have purchased a home with my girlfriend that's immediately behind that shopping center on West 46th Avenue. But, and she will probably have her own comments a little bit later, but as far as the incentives, I think what we've seen going on in this community as a result of incentives has shown that that's what's able to draw some of the folks to our community that maybe would go and build elsewhere. Also, the fact that Lane 4 has done a fabulous job with the properties on 39th and Rainbow that has dramatically improved that area. The fact that there are that area of town by the strip mall, there's a lot more development going on, and it's just exciting. I've been a Rosedale resident now for 17 years, and I haven't seen so much recent development. It's just really becoming kind of a hot place, and I hope we can continue down that path, because what we have right now is an eyesore. There's a lot of problems around that mall. And here's the fact that you have one of the most popular restaurants in the entire city, in fact, one of the most famous ones in the country, in Oklahoma Joe's. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to get calling them Kansas City Joe's, but people, anybody who comes to town, they always show up there, and right next to it is a real big eyesore. So I, along with many others from the Spring Valley neighborhood, strongly support this plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Adams. I live at 2904 West 46th Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas. I am a KCK resident that lives on the perimeter of the current 46th Avenue strip mall. I'm also one of the residential property owner experts in regards to that particular property in that area. I've been very active in getting support from those people that live in the perimeter of it, and looking for solutions and answers over the last 2 years to try and resolve a lot of the negativity that has been coming out of that. The key issues that have been impacting the neighborhood on a negative level have been crime, lack of code enforcement, very poor aesthetics, and also issues with safety. This is a building with a management firm that has demonstrated very little commitment to the community, and therefore change is going to be a very good thing right now. I come to you tonight representing a group and a growing number of homeowners in the Frank Rushton area that are in favor of the Lane 4 development. Much of this support does have a lot to do with the success that this development firm has had with the Rainbow Project, but also that the community has faith in them, even seeing what's been started with the Westwood Project. Lane 4 is they're going to be bringing progression and quality and commitment into the Frank Rushton area in that section of town that we have not had for a good 20 years as a result of some lack of strong community service and support for the 47th Avenue. So I ask in favor of those people that I'm working with closely from a regional perspective that we do move forward with the Lane 4 project and allow some independent funding to come in to betterment that area of Frank Rushton. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak in the public hearing for or against? The proposal will have an opportunity to answer any concerns, questions that are raised, so I will assure you that you will get that opportunity. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this time? Let the record show no one else is coming forward. I will now close the public hearing, and I will ask, before the developer comes forward, I do want to ask our administrator to clarify a couple of issues that were raised during the presentation that I think are salient to the conversation.
Thanks, Mayor. I think a couple of the points, and I believe that raised by Ms. Holliday with RDA about the 47th Street Corridor Committee, that is a planning and zoning type item that's taken up, so it really doesn't have the impact on what you do with your development agreement as it's before you tonight. So really how we go along through that process, talk about treatments of the sidewalk, such like that, individuals, those are items that are addressed as part of that meeting as you go through P&Z. I will also offer, Mayor, that while I've had the opportunity to work on quite a few development projects, I probably don't get any more excited than when Lane 4 came forward to start talking about doing redevelopment in our urban core areas. It's an opportunity for us when they talk about reinvestment from CID dollars or such dollars coming back in, they're solely making the commitment to go put their dollars on the line, and the only dollars they're asking for from us are dollars that they're going to create as new dollars coming back into our community. And whenever we can see that happen in our urban core, that's one where I direct my staff to get all over that and figure out ways to get it done. This is a very good project, and you didn't ask me for all that, but I'm going to offer it because
Always appreciate your opinion. We do also want to say the differentiation, the 47th Street Corridor Committee will meet, will review, and will continue to work with the developers because that is planning and zoning. This is the financial part of the economic development agreement that we're doing. So there isn't, it's not mutually exclusive that if we vote on this today, then they no longer have to work with the 47th Street Committee. We do have an ordinance, an interlocal agreement with 2 other cities, and it's important that we uphold those obligations as part of that. So certainly we have a commitment to that committee continuing its work. And I just know the developers are committed to that as well. They were aware of that group when they came into this property and have been meeting with them and will need to continue to meet all the design guidelines that that corridor deserves. So, and I would think for $5.5 million, you ought to meet them all. So we're excited about that. Commissioner Philbrook.
Yes, Mayor. I just want to say that I'm glad that you cleared up some of the issues that I was thinking about and that had been mentioned. And I'm glad to hear that there's going to be mutual cooperation in this development and that everybody in the community is going to be proud of it. Okay. So as usual, I say please play well together and come back with something that we can really be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you.
For approval.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. I did offer the developer an opportunity to make comment if he cares to, and so I don't want to truncate that. I'd made that obligation prior to the motion. So, Mr. Maxwell, if you'd like to make comment.
When there's a motion for approval, the best thing a lawyer can do is just sit down.
Well
Okay.
said.
Well said. We do have a question by Mr. Walker.
I have a couple of questions. I guess the first one would be to you, Corb.
Questions directly for the developer?
Developer.
Yes.
I mean, you've done beautiful work on Rainbow, the developer has. And
May you please speak directly into the microphone?
I'm very pleased with it, but, you know, I've been by that a number of times, primarily because of Kansas City, Oklahoma Joe's, and it seems like that's an awful lot of money for a facelift. I mean, I guess the question is, what are you going to do for 5.56 million to change that without, I mean, you could almost build a brand-new entire structure for $5.56 million.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner. Cord Maxwell, Polsinelli Law Firm, appearing today on behalf of Foundation Investors. I have with me as well, and Foundation Investors is the special purpose entity that Lane 4 has put together. I have with me as well Hunter Harris, who's the Vice President of Development and Acquisitions and the manager of this project. It does sound like a striking number, but what we're dealing with here is a 51,000 square foot shopping center that was built in the 1960s that by and large is owned by a group of investors that are absentee landlords, and not just absentee as not in Wyandotte County, absentee as on both coasts, and all they want is their check sent out to them. They have made no investments in these properties for going on 15 or 20 years. And because of that, we have a roof that is falling in that needs to be immediately replaced. We have facades that need to be improved. And most importantly, over and above that 5.56 that's not included in that is additional, we have significant TI dollars and packages that we need to bring to lure in the higher class of tenants that we want to put into this center. And different than what we're doing in 39 Rainbow, or doing on Woodside, or that would be possible on the Plaza, or maybe further south on Johnson County, we truly view this as a neighborhood center. This will not be $25, $30 rent corporate national type tenants. This is going to be more local, mom and pop, creative, interesting tenants that really bring and sort of tie in a fabric of a neighborhood. And what happens, Commissioner, is when we pay an extremely high acquisition price for this property, even though it's in such terrible shape, we pursued this center for over 2 years as part of sort of Lane 4's general strategy of all in on KU Med and the KU Hospital and Rosedale and Spring Hill neighborhood. We pursued this for over 2 years. We are overpaying for the property. Completely 100% admit that we are overpaying for the property, but we had to overpay for property at 39 Rainbow, and you just often have to in urban redevelopment overpay for property. So there is overpaying for property, new roofs being put on, new facades, and significant TI dollars for that. I would say
Can you
that
say what TI dollars are?
tenant improvements, sorry, Mayor. It's the internal improvements that if you wanted to bring in a high-quality restaurant, if you want to bring in something to get away with what we basically call, we have the holy trinity right now of a blighted shopping center. We have high vacancy, payday loans, and liquor stores. We need to improve that, and it's
I
going
would
to take
not call that a
significant-
holy trinity.
It was.
I know the Holy Trinity, sir. That is not it.
It was playing to your background, Mayor, there. Your business versus our business here in redevelopment. These significant dollars that go in, and what I would posit, Commissioner, as well, is when you look at that 5.5 to 5.6, the number, as Lou said, that $1.9 million cap, that's of course over a 20-year period. And as Doug pointed out, we are financing this all on our own. So if you put in all of those financing costs, it would make the private investment number go way up. Or if you tried to bring down the net present value on developers' terms of what the incentive is, it's much, much, much lower.
Let me ask, have you met with all of the neighborhood groups involved?
We have met with the 47th and Mission Committee. We are happy, Commissioner, to meet with any neighborhood groups and discuss any items related to this development that we need to talk to.
That would be
or talk
required
about.
during the planning and zoning process.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I have a question for Ms. Holliday, please. Yeah, please. I'm curious, is there a reason that Rosedale has not yet taken a position on this? I mean, I've heard that Frank Rushton and Spring Valley have both endorsed it. Now, are you not taking a position?
No, what
for
I was
any
saying
reason?
is I don't have a position on the development agreement per se. We are obviously extremely excited to see investment in the area. and to see a quality shopping center there. We would, as part of that, say that compliance with the 47th and Mission Plan is going to be part of that quality experience. But no, we're excited to see this reinvestment in the area.
Okay, so I can take that as, because it matters to me what Rosedale RDA thinks.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
So I can take that to mean that at this point of the game, RDA is fully supporting this project.
My board has not taken an official vote on that, but unofficially, I would say that I am very excited about it, and that what we have heard is that everyone is in favor of the quality redevelopment that's being proposed in the area. The one piece that I have heard loud and clear is that compliance with the master plan with the 47th and Mission Overlay District is really important to ensure that it matches with the other quality development that's been happening.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval. Seeing no further comments, roll call.
Roll call, Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
All right, we have one final item. Before we go to that, we do want to welcome a fellow elected official here, Marianne Flunder. We appreciate your being here. And with the Kansas City, Kansas Community College Board of Trustees. Our last item is a request for a mobile home placement following a house fire.
Move to approve.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Roll call, Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. We are adjourned. It's all good.
I almost had to go to jail.